Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. Let's talk boxing. We're going to talk about the Fury and Ngannou undercard fights on this particular video. I'm actually going to be recording after each fight takes place, and then I'll just bring it all together into one video and upload it tomorrow, so it'll be Sunday by the time you guys see it. I'm hoping to upload the video for Francis Ngannou's fight against Fury, the technical breakdown review for that, tonight. So Saturday night. So the night before you guys are seeing this video. So this one's for the undercard, and I've already seen two. Bakole up against Carlos Takam, and we've just seen Moses Itauma perform as well. So let's start off with those two, and then we'll talk about the rest as they play out. With regards to Martin Bakole, I was concerned for him when I first saw him on the scales. 299 pounds. My man was looking like he was on a high cholesterol diet, like he needed to join Slimming World. And you've seen that his trainer, Billy Nelson, who I've had on the channel before, lovely guy, brilliant trainer, very underrated, has been banging the drum for his charge for a long time. And this is his opportunity on a big stage, a big platform. How many millions are going to watch this event? And you're coming in like that. Then you start to hear rumours that he had a back injury in camp. So now you're starting to think, oh dear, this is, I mean, I don't want to say a potential banana skin, but he might not look great here. I was picking Martin Bakole to win the fight. After I saw what terrible shape he was in, aesthetically, I was still picking Martin Bakole to win the fight on points. I didn't think he would put out the statement that he did tonight. He stopped Carlos Takam in 4 rounds. And one of the things I loved about that display is the different facets to his game that he displayed. There are a couple of areas that I think he needs to improve on. There's work that needs to be done if he's going to become an elite heavyweight, in my opinion. But listen, he's a serious problem at heavyweight. And somebody sarcastically asked me on Twitter when I said he's a serious problem. Is he really? Listen, he's got a lot of strings to that bow. He came out in the first round and he's got that lead hand low. And he's almost daring Carlos Takam to come in. And Takam's on that back foot, showing some upper body movement, trying to figure out how to enter the pocket. And Bakole's not cutting off the ring on him. He's not going after him. And that's one of the areas I think he does need to work on. Because he does have this habit, Bakole, of just literally walking in. And his feet are coming too close together. And when you're walking in, if you have to quickly readjust, you have to readjust your feet. So if you're coming in and somebody's very quick at then collapsing the pocket and timing that entry, he can touch you and then spin off, pivot out. You then need to turn with him and adjust. And so you don't really want that situation with Bakole, especially if he's up against a raiding fighter. Think a style of David Haye or Michael Hunter, who he fell short against in the past. So these are certain areas that I think he really needs to work on. But he wasn't in a position where he was being made to pay for anything against Takam, because he was very comfortable with the situation. You saw how nonchalant he was looking. And what was happening as he was shooting that jab, Carlos Takam initially was trying to fire a jab back instantly. And you just saw how comfortable he was with it, the agility he had. He just literally pulled back. There was one occasion only where Takam's at sort of mid-range and Bakole tries to step in with a short right hand, and Takam throws up an arm, blocks it, and lands a short right hand of his own. And Bakole maybe just shifted his weight onto that lead foot a little bit too much. Maybe he lent his weight a little bit over that lead knee, and it affected his balance. That was the only real moment where Takam was effective. That aside, he was comfortable. But Billy Nelson, I think, understanding this platform and how important it is to make a statement, started having a go at him. You got to move your feet more quickly. You know, you're going to have to cut off the ring. I want you to go after this guy. And then you started to see some urgency. You started to see a nice little left hook off of the jab from Bakole. But where it really impressed me the most, because we know he's got fast hands, we know he's got fluid hands, it's when he went onto the ropes. He goes on, he's back on the ropes and he's covering up and he's letting Carlos Takam, who's a rugged guy who can fight on the inside, he's letting him work, but he's noticing everything that's coming his way. There was one point he had his left arm across his chest, he had his right hand up, and every time Carlos Takam's looking to throw an over-the-top shot, he's literally just throwing up the hand and catching it. When he's then coming to the other side, he's catching it on the other side. Very comfortable. He's using his forearms to feel Takam. So by having his forearms on Takam's arms, for instance, he knows when there's some movement there, shoulder, arms, whatever it might be, on his body, when there's some movement, he's about to shoot. And so he's ready to react. And it's almost as though his hands go into the right spot before Takam's actually released the shot. He was reading him based on feeling, which is how you're supposed to fight on the inside, by the way. That's how the top fighters fight on the inside. And that was there for him. You saw it was a really, really nice understanding of what the opponent was trying to do when he had his back on the ropes. And he's also got very long arms, Martin Bakole. So when someone's on your chest and you've got long arms, it's going to be difficult to find the right shots. He's essentially finding those right shots by knowing exactly how much to lean back just to create enough spacing, but also knowing when to slap rather than load up with a big shot. And there were points where he was just using a number of slaps to overwhelm Carlos Takam, top of the head, just up above the temple. Those can discombobulate you. Then when he decides he's going to come out and he starts targeting the body, you start to see some wonderful work to the body. It's just so many different strings to his bow. He's got agility. He puts his hands together very well. He can fight with his back off the ropes. You know, there's a lot there. He's got a lovely jab. Very fluid, very fast jab. There's a lot there, man. And Billy Nelson's done a terrific job with him. He's blatantly improved as well by sparring with Tyson Fury. You could see some of the stuff that Fury likes to do. You start to see little implications of it in Bakole's game too. And listen, some of the best heavyweights of all time have learned from sparring other great fighters. Sonny Liston used to spar George Foreman, and Foreman went on to become what he became. Larry Holmes used to spar Muhammad Ali, and he went on to become what he became. You pick up certain things, and I think that Bakole's also picking up on certain things there. Is the problem. Moving on from that, let's talk a little bit about Moses Itauma as well. I really liked Itauma's performance today because you could see that the opponent he was up against was calm. That's the one thing I'll say. He wasn't panicked by what was happening. And so he had this high guard, and he had very slow hands by the look of it. When he did let them go, they were slow. And so athletically speaking, there was a massive gap between these guys. But what you did see is that Itauma was spotting the gaps to the body, to the solar plexus, and around the left elbow to land to the ribs. And what he was doing was basically trying to set those shots up in a fluid way without necessarily overloading. But then he was also thinking about how he would get safe after that. There was one occasion only where he stayed in the pocket a little bit too tall, and he got caught with a couple of hooks, partially landed. One of them was partially blocked. Nothing major, but at a high level, you got to be careful. If you're up against a catch and counter fighter in that situation, you got to be careful of that. But he started to adapt to that, and he would land the hook, and as he's landing in, he's getting his head on the outside of the lead shoulder of the opponent, so he was staying safe there too. But that backhand to the solar plexus and the right hook around the elbow, lovely shot selection from Moses Itauma. And then for the knockdown, you saw that he just patted down on top of the lead hand of the opponent, came over with a short jab, and by the time he came with a left hook, it was a power jab that he stepped into. The opponent was on his way down already. So it was just a really good performance from Moses Itauma. He continues to look like a fantastic talent, and he's very, very calm with it. He really believes in himself. Okay, so I've just now seen Arslanbek Makhmudov also destroyed his opponent inside the first round. Now, a lot of people are going to be focusing on the fact that he looks like a monster, right? It looks like an enforcer of some Russian mob. If they were to, I don't know, if some aliens were to invade the Chechen mountains or something, you could just imagine that this is the dude they would send to go sort out those Martians. But if you look beyond that, forget the way he looks, forget that he looks intimidating. We know he carries a lot of power. We know he's destructive. He destroyed the guy inside a round. But Junior Anthony Wright is 37 years old, the significantly smaller man. This is not somebody that you're going to look at and think, okay, he's a potential real threat here to Arslanbek Makhmudov. This is one of the reasons I've been so critical of a lot of these B status guys, Frank Sanchez and Arslanbek Makhmudov in particular, because they have such high rankings and they're not fighting anybody of note. What chance did this dude have? What did he learn from that tonight? If that was Moses Itauma tonight, we'd say, okay, that was a good step up in terms of experience. Even Moses Itauma, you'd say, even at this early stage where he's 18 years old, you expect him to deal with this guy. How is this conducive to becoming a heavyweight champion when you're ranked 4th in the world or whatever? How is this the right sort of opponent you want if that's what you're aiming to do? It's not what people want to be seeing. Despite that, as a performance, whilst it looks destructive, there are a couple of things I don't like there. And it makes me wonder, is this why they're putting him in with this sort of opponent? He looks very stiff. And not only does he look stiff, at one point, I think it's around 2 minutes and 25 seconds of the round, 2 minutes and 27 seconds of the round remaining, somewhere there. So you're talking about 30 seconds in. He tries to step in with a jab. And Wright, the one thing he has about him is more mobility than Makhmudov because he's smaller. He's a more agile guy. He slips on the inside of the jab and he lands a nice little uppercut into the belly. Now, if that was a mover, if that was a Frank Sanchez, and I know I've just been critical of Sanchez, we're just using a stylistic example here, who likes to move and slip inside and land power shots, how would he have taken that power shot? So one thing against this smaller guy who's 37 years old, who's no great shakes, how are you going to take that? In addition to that, in the middle of his wide hooking, these really wide caveman-like hooks, his elbow's almost completely straight when he's throwing it, he's getting caught with little hooks too. Now again, if you're talking about a puncher in there who's going to have certain athletic advantages, who's going to know how to throw a good technical hook, where he's going to turn the knuckles over, is he going to end up timing Makhmudov, landing something right on that button? To me, he's a caveman, he's a physical brute, there's no doubt about it, a real specimen. And there are certain aspects to his game whereby it makes him very dangerous. He's physically very strong, and when he gets in that clinch, he seems to dominate anyone, no matter how strong they are. He'll move them around, and over the course of 12 rounds, that could zap your energy. But is he really what they're making him out to be? I don't know. I still think he needs some work. So, just seeing Joseph Parker stop Simon Kean. In the first round, you saw that Kean came out and he was showing a little bit of ambition, and he got caught with a couple of shots, and then he seemed to go in his shell a little bit. And when he would throw back and he would land, you could see that he's naturally heavy-handed. He landed one shot, I think, on the temple of Joseph Parker, and Parker did a little dip, and you're thinking, oh, if he just needs to let his hands go a little bit more, this could get interesting. He needed to turn it into a sort of fight where it's a blowout, because he was a lot more stiff than Joseph Parker. There was a clear gap in skill. I kind of knew that would be the case prior to the fight. I knew that Joseph Parker should win this fight by stoppage, because Kean's a big man. He might look the part, and he carries some heavy hands in there. But like I said, he's stiff. There's almost like this pole down the spine of his back, and he can't bend forward. So the way he was dealing with it is to have his back leg quite far out, so he's got quite a wide stance, and he's shifted his weight onto that lead leg, and he's got this high guard, but it's open through the middle, and I think he's trying to protect from an over-the-top Joseph Parker right hand. That would explain why he's come low to the level of Parker to lower his height, and also leaning forward with protecting that sort of side-on angle. What that did is leave an opening through the centre line, and Joseph Parker was able to really dictate with the jab, and on occasion come in quickly with his superior athleticism and throw these hooks around the guard. Now, the way the stoppage came about is that because that opening was there, and he realized that when he was jabbing at Kean wasn't punching back. He wasn't really someone who was looking to punch with Parker or to follow him out or anything like that. So as a result of that, he engaged him essentially. He froze him by throwing a throwaway double jab. There's nothing on it. He doesn't even touch the target, but it's in the eyesight of Kean, and he's hiding essentially what he's setting up, which was the backhand uppercut. And he dropped him, he hurt him. When he then got up, you saw that he did the same thing, but rather than it being a double jab, it was a single jab. Throwaway single jab through the middle to set up the backhand uppercut, and that was all she wrote. So he wasn't able to adjust to what happened to him the first time around. He fell for the same trick twice, basically. So it just shows the difference in levels between the two. In terms of Joseph Parker, where can he go from here? Look, Parker's still only 31 years old. He's very athletic. He had a great fight with Joe Joyce. He had a lot of success. Don't write off that Joe Joyce as an opponent. Don't say, he lost to Joyce and Joyce got obliterated by Zhang. Styles make fights. Joseph Parker's no joke. Very good fighter, but he has had issues, I think, mentally, psychologically. He seems to be a guy that perhaps has lacked killer instinct. Well, tonight he had a killer instinct, and you want to see more of that from Joseph Parker. But in terms of talent, I'd love to see him in a ring against some of the B-level guys, those B-status guys. Put him in with a Sanchez, a Makhmudov, a Martin Bakole. These are the guys that need to start fighting each other. So it was a good performance from Joseph Parker. In terms of Simon Kean, he's stiff, but he carries power. So I can imagine him being in the ring with somebody like Joe Cusimano. I know Cusimano's failed that drugs test, but we're just talking about stylistically now. That would be a really good fight. Guys with similar sort of attributes. So there's a place for Simon Kean, but I just don't think he's ever going to be an elite fighter, to be honest with you, but entertaining nonetheless. Fabio Wardley, take a bow, son. He just stopped David Adeleye in 7 rounds. It was a fantastic performance, to be honest with you. Don't get thrown by some of the bias, I have to say, from the BT editing team. In the second round, for instance, Wardley landed 2 big right hands, and in the replay in between the rounds, it showed the same power jab that Adeleye landed on 3 occasions. It didn't show you the right hands. The fact of the matter is, he won most of the rounds. I think maybe I gave 1 or 2 rounds to Adeleye at most, and he fought the completely wrong fight. In the preview, I spoke about certain technical elements that could play out, and they did play out, but I expected Adeleye to fight a different fight completely. And that's why I was essentially picking him. The way he was fighting today, I knew within the first couple of rounds he was going to lose this fight. In my opinion, from a tactical perspective, he got it all wrong. In the first round, he came in with that power jab. And we spoke in the preview how he's got this tail where he lowers the hand and then fires it off. So while it's powerful, there's a tail there. And by the second round, when he started to get caught with shots and falling short with that jab, he was doing this little lean back, was Fabio Wardley, and it was falling short. Once he was spotting those tails, which we spoke about in the preview was a real possibility, you started to see that Adeleye became less willing to throw the jab. We also spoke in the preview how Adeleye is susceptible to a long right hand if you're coming in at the angle from the left. He's also susceptible to being made to be inaccurate when you're changing the level. And early in the fight, you saw that Fabio Wardley was at points changing the level and Adeleye was missing wildly, whether it was a right hook or a straight right hand. And you saw that with the long right hand, he was landing flush on Adeleye. So whilst these were areas that I knew were there to be exposed, I thought that Adeleye would force him onto the back foot more. I thought he'd show more aggression. The way he's conducted himself throughout the course of the build-up, the way he fought in round 5, and he didn't win that round necessarily, but the way he approached it is the right way to have approached this fight. Try and step in with that jab, push him back. Do not let Fabio Wardley come forward, essentially, is what you need to do. Instead, it was Wardley that kept him on the back foot and wasn't allowing him to set. Now, I wanted to see Wardley throw a few more feints and then come in. He was throwing feints, but they were almost all heavy feints. You know, almost stamping his foot, threatening to come in. And Adeleye weren't really falling for that too much. If he had actually jabbed to the chest, the shoulder, been a bit more varied with the feints in the way you'd vary a jab, sometimes subtle, sometimes harder, I think he would have been drawing out more shots from Adeleye too. So he could have ended up starting to really land some big shots earlier. Instead, what happened is that he started to say, you know what, I'm just going to dictate with the jab. And Adelaye's upper body movement and his head movement was non-existent. And his corner were giving him terrible advice. At one point, they were saying, you got his timing, but you're just not like capitalizing on that timing. He didn't have his timing at all. He had to move away from trying to time his entries and get him on the back foot. Whereas when you look at the other corner, by the way, you know how everybody gets excited and tries to mug off Ben Davison, boxer size Ben and all that stupidness. Listen to the advice he was giving him. Quality advice. There were moments in there, close up, in the clinch. He was leaving some openings for Adeleye, and Wardley was getting hurt. At one point, he got buzzed with a real good combination up close. And Ben Davison saying to him, don't forget when you're clinching him, pull him in close, get your head next to his head to protect yourself from that. He's giving him specific instructions as to how to take away what Adeleye is bringing to the table. The Adeleye corner weren't doing that as far as I could tell. There was some lovely body work as well from Fabio Wardley, and you could see that was taking a toll on Adeleye. And by the 5th round, it actually looked like Wardley was tiring, and then he seemed to get a second wind. And by the 6th round, I tweeted just to say, listen, regardless of what happens here, the tactical battle has clearly been won by Fabio Wardley. Adelaye's fighting the completely wrong fight. And because he fought the wrong fight, the things we spoke about in the preview were exploited. The areas of weakness were exploited. They didn't address that. And ultimately, that's what decided the fight. Fantastic from Fabio Wardley. He's been branded soft because he's been conducting himself so well throughout the course of this build up to the fight. People saying how he was afraid and stuff like that. I never saw an inch of that, not an iota of that. He just wanted to control his emotions, and I always felt that was the case. Whereas with Adeleye, I think it was tactical, a lot of it, the way he played it. But one thing I will say, somebody left a comment. I've just quickly popped back to the preview video to see who left the comment. It was Christopher Persaud. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. Is it French? Persaud? Is it silent D at the end? He was basically comparing Adeleye in the build-up to this fight to somebody like Audley Harrison. Now, I'm not making that comparison myself, but what he was saying is that he believes that Adeleye has a little bit of a bully persona about him, and that maybe if he gets put it on him, essentially, that he could get unstuck because bullies don't react well to being bullied. What I'll say is this: he showed heart to get up from being dropped, and he pushed the referee away when he was stopped, and I do think it was slightly premature. I know Steve Bunce was saying it was a correct stoppage. I thought maybe it was a few seconds too early because Wardley's letting go of a big effort there, and if he survives, and he's not completely gone, if he survives, Wardley's gassed and Adeleye might get a second wind. It's not a terrible stoppage, but I can see why from his perspective he felt that he was okay to carry on. The thing is, though, although he showed heart in doing that, he didn't show the required aggression to alter the course of the fight. He was getting outboxed, he was getting lit up at points, and he didn't show the aggression to say, you know what, let's have it. That didn't really happen. There were sporadic moments, but not really. And that's been repeated in the Sokolovsky fight, a fight that I felt officially he may have won, but in reality he lost. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that Christopher Persaud is right here, but what do you think of this? Was he just not allowed to do what he had to do tonight? Or is it a question mark around his mentality, as Christopher Persaud believes here? Let me know what you think, ladies and gents. We'll be bringing another video right now of Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou. That will probably go up before this particular video. Thanks for watching, ladies and gents. Don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Take care. God bless.